Hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Annie and this is my creative detour. Today I'm going on with something that I promised that I would do probably around about 2.5 months ago, and it is making the cover for a journal out of my faux wallpaper. Now, possibly around September last year, I started playing with the idea of using packaging, all different sorts of packaging, and doing a journal out of packaging. You can see that this one's got lots of different types of packaging in it. It's got wrap from the delicatessen, it's got wrap from apple cartons. This one here is for wrapping delicate items. And there's a range of different things, brown paper and so on, corrugated cardboard. And in the process, I did make some faux leather and I made some faux wallpaper. And you can see here's the faux embossed leather. And I did a video on my faux wallpaper, and it was actually one of the most popular videos of the year last year. So you can see here I have a piece of my wallpaper, and it has some delicatessen wrap, white paper on the back. You know, the white paper that you go to the deli and you buy meat and things from, or cheese, and they wrap it in white paper. Well, it's on the back. And then onto the white paper, I put layer after layer of used tea bags. And I used quite a few layers of tea bags, and it gave it a really thick, sturdy base. And then onto the top of that, I put just the patterned layer of serviettes. And you can see I've got a nice serviette pattern here. And it is made with Mod Podge. And it's very vinyl-y and it's water resistant. And you can hear that it's quite thick and sturdy. So I will link the video to my faux wallpaper below for you to watch how I make it. So when I made my faux wallpaper, I promised everybody that was watching that I would make a journal out of it. Well, here we are today, and I'm making a journal out of my faux wallpaper that's from packaging, and I'm also making it from a piece of packaging post pack. So you can see here this is a paper recycle post pack, and it actually has some of that corrugated paper in the middle of it. And my husband gets this each month, and it's a coffee subscription from Thieves Baristas and here in Australia, and he gets a bag of coffee beans once a month in one of these bags. So all I've done is I have, where it's been cut open and made a bit rough, I've folded that nice and neatly. I've put a bit of masking tape onto it, and then I've also cut a piece of cardstock off of the back of some 12 by 12 paper. I have it here. So it's just a piece of chipboard, and it's not overly thick and it bends quite easily. I've just put a piece of that on and glued it on with art glitter glue and folded my bag and got it prepped. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cover this with my wallpaper and turn it into a journal. So let's get my desk set up and I'll show you what I'm going to do. And I want to glue down my fabric. You see I've got a nice piece of fabric here. I want to glue down my fabric onto the inside first so that it can be underneath a really heavy book while we sort out some of the decoration on the cover. So let's get started with that first. Okay, so what we have here are the decorations for the front and my fabric. So you can see that I've got my tools. I'm using some scissors, I'm using some distress ink, I just got a pencil and ruler, and I've already done some stamping and embossing. I've got a card to spread my glue, and I've got some things prepped here well, half prepped, that I'm going to use to decorate the front of my journal. We'll pop that to the side and we'll glue down our fabric first. Okay, so what I think I'd like to do first is I think I'd just like to cover this with a piece of paper so that it's not rubbing on the fabric. And I've just put it in there to give the spine a little bit of extra stability because I'm going to be stitching some signatures into it. And I just want it to have something to bite to. But I don't want the edges of this to pop through my fabric. So I'm just going to cover it with a piece of just plain paper, just scrap paper. And I'm probably going to use art glitter glue for that and just lay down quite a bit of glue. It's just to stop the chipboard edge from popping through and pushing through the fabric. I've been having quite a few problems with my art glitter glue because the weather here in Brisbane is so humid, and I'm trying to use it all up so I can wash the bottle out and clean it all and start fresh. So it's giving me a little bit of problems while I'm getting to that stage. Okay, so I've just glued in a piece of paper and I'm just going to fold those, burnish it a bit where I want it to fold. So now I have the inside just covered, and I'm going to put on this nice piece of green fabric, and I picked this out of my supplies because it goes quite nicely with my wallpaper. So I'm going to put that down with some Helma wash and wear glue, and it's permanent fabric glue and it dries clear and it's flexible. I'm going to glue that down, and I'm just going to spread this with my gift card. So we'll probably do it in sections, I think. I think I'd like to do it in sections. I just want to have it spread fairly evenly so that it doesn't have any big blobs anywhere. We'll lay that on. Get it fairly centered. That looks pretty good actually. And I'm going to give that a bit of a push down, burnish down. And I'm just going to pull it back just quickly and finish off this edge. We use all these tools, you know, we use all these fangle dangle tools, and we go and find things we think, oh, that'll be good. And then there's nothing better than your hands, is there? You know, and at the end you kind of think, oh, look, I'll just put it down with my fingers and I can feel what's happening. Now I'm just going to go ahead now and fold all of this back. I'm going to fold the corners in nice and neatly and get it pressed underneath some heavy books, and I'll come back to you. Okay, now there we go. I have that fully covered with that fabric glue, and some of it has seeped through a little bit, but I'm not too worried about it. It will dry clear once it's dry, but I'm going to press this now. I'm going to put it underneath a few books and just let it sit while I do the rest of the things that I need to do. Okay, so now what we have is our cover here. You can see that I've got it partially folded where it's going to be sitting. And I also have a few other bits and pieces here. You can see that I have made a frame. Now I made a frame out of that same chipboard that I used to support the spine. So I cut a frame out. I just pulled out some book pages out of different gardening books, And then I've just stamped a few flowery words on it, and I've also put the date on it. So you can see I've got 1st of January 2025, and I've got the 1st of January 2026. And I've also got faves here. Now what I'm making is a book of my favorites. So to keep an example of my favorite ideas. So it's a little bit of an ideas book, except it's not a massive, big ideas book. It's purely just pulling out the things that I enjoyed or liked the most and the things that you guys like the most, and I'm going to house them in here. I'm going to put all of 2025s into it, and then I'll put 2026s in it as I go. And you can see that I've just pulled out an image out of a magazine, and I've put 2026 on it, and I've embossed that with some copper embossing powder, and that matches the word faves up there. So I'm going to put that onto the front of my journal. I also have die cut out 25 in some black numbers, and I've got one of my handmade flowers that I've made out of packaging and out of the wallpaper. So you can see at the back here, here's some of that wallpaper, and I've got a video on that as well on how to make these paper flowers, and I'll link that video below as well. So I'm going to put that on, and I've also stamped out the word create and embossed it in copper. And I've got a little bit of cheesecloth, and I've got a lollipop stick, a large lollipop stick, and I've just stamped a few flowers onto it. A little bit of foliage. I'm going to stick that on there, and I'm going to create a band to put around my journal with that. But we'll come to that bit at the end, because I want to talk about that and tell you who my inspiration was for making one of those. But let's do our journal cover first, because I want to put this on and I want to stitch around the frame before I glue and stitch this onto my journal. Let's work on this first. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to put a little bit of line work, pen work onto this image and some colouring. I want to put some coloured pencil onto it and just intensify it a little bit. First of all, I'm going to do some line work with my pens. So I'm just going to draw around the image, and I'm going to keep it fairly whimsical and not overthink it too much. And I did something similar to this just recently in my postcards video, where I went over images with line work and made them, you know, pop a little bit of creative license on it. Okay, I'm happy with that. You can see it's just got a little bit of pen work on it and makes it a little bit more whimsical. Plus the flowers on the serviette have a little bit of pen work around the edges of it as well. So that kind of works nicely. All right, now I've just pulled out a piece of scrap out of the bin so I can check my colours. And I'm just going to layer up the colour a little bit more because it needs to be intensified. Now I have some blender pens, and they're Derwent blender pens, and I'm just going to blend that out a little bit. So you can see that I'm cleaning the tip of this in between a little bit, and that's because I'm trying to get the pigment off of it, and it's a solvent-based pen. Now Prismacolor are solvent-based colour pencils. So this Derwent blender pen is solvent-based, so it's diluting the pigment a little bit. You can see that it dilutes it, and you can blend the actual pigment. They're great to work with. I just got mine from Eckersley's, which was an art supply store here in Australia, and that's what they're called, Derwent blender pens. and they're a very good addition to your supplies. Alright, now what I also want to do is I want to beef up some of the pigment that's in the background and make it more present. So let's see how that goes. And you can kind of push it around a bit. You can see I'm pushing it up to where I want it. There we go. It's got a lot more pigment into it now, and it's a little bit more intense. We've got more presence, so I'm happy with that. That will do. So before you finish with your blender pen, you've just got to clean it. So you just need to work it until it's not showing any pigment. So you're kind of working the pigment off of the tip just till it starts to go clear again. So you can see it's starting to go pretty clear now, and that will be fine. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay, so now I'm really happy with that. It needed to be more intense because of how dominant the background is. So I needed to intensify it a bit. Okay, I've just pulled out my coffee bag. It's not dry yet, but I need to just make sure I get the position of this correct on the front. So I'm thinking I like it like this. And I just need to now glue this together on here. Make sure I get it in the right spot. Glue it onto my cover, and then I'll take the cover off and I'll stitch it so that we have it in the right position. So let's glue our image on, and I'm just going to use art glitter glue for that. I'm just going to put a small amount of glue around the back of the frame. And glue that on. Yes, that will be good. So just to recap how I made that frame, I just used some chipboard. I pulled out some pages out of some gardening books. I collaged them on, put a little bit of gesso over the top of it just to pull it back. Then I stamped a few gardening sort of things on it. This one's about dandelion heads. This one says florets. And that one's talking about the bottom half of the dandelion. So I'm happy with that, but let's work out where now we're going to position this on my journal so that I can glue it on, and then I'll whiz it around the sewing machine. So I think I want it about there. I'm going to put my band to hold my journal closed. I'm going to put it down here, and I have the create to go on, and I also have one of these flowers, and it's going to sit on the bottom of the frame. So I think that I want it around about there, centered. So let's put a little bit of glue on that. Let's just measure it. So like I said, I am going to sew around this, but I just want to get it positioned first. Make sure that I've got it level and straight before we put some stitching on it. Okay, let's take that out. Okay, so I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this cover to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch around this frame. And then what I'll do is I will sew the cover to the coffee bag that I've already covered with fabric. So I'll do all the sewing all together, and I'll come back to you and we'll finish decorating the cover. I'll see you very soon. Okay, I'm back, and I'm not a sewer, so I did have a few issues with movement. I did clamp it with some little clamps. I had some little clamps, these ones, that I clamped it, but it did move a little bit. So there's one corner that I'm not happy with, but overall I'm really happy with it. The wallpaper does slide around a little bit on the sewing machine. So I'll just clean up some of those threads and show you how we went. So I started by sewing around the frame. I sewed it to the wallpaper first. Then I put the wallpaper and the paper postage pack in, and I pegged it all. And I'm not sure whether you can see, but I stitched in different ways. I didn't just stitch all the way around it because I wanted to create somewhere for it to fold. So what I did was I put it into the machine and I sewed down here first on the front, and then I turned it in the sewing machine and I sewed around here and around and joined it up. And the reason I did it like that was because I wouldn't have been able to fit all of that into my sewing machine for it to turn. So I had to do it in 2 runs. So down here first and then around like that. Then I did down the spine and I turned, and then I went back along the spine and along. So I've done a rectangle on the spine. And then I did the same thing on the back as I did on the front, where I sewed straight down here first, and then I turned it and I went around like that. Well, this is where I came a little bit undone. I didn't have this clamped properly, and I stitched along there, and by the time I got to here, you can see that I'm a little bit off. It's a little bit gaping here, and my overhang here isn't aligning properly. But it's on the back and I'm okay with that. You can see that I've only just managed to sew the pocket down, but it will be okay. I could stitch another run in that, but I think it's going to hold. You can see that my tension is all over the place. I've got to play with that a little bit more. But like I said, I'm not a sewer. So there we go. I have a cover made and I'm really happy with it. It's squishy. I'm not sure whether you can hear it. It's really squishy and it's going to be very durable. So let's now finish off the front and make a little closure. So I'm going to now glue on our 25 onto here, and I'm also going to glue on my flower. So let's do that first. Yeah, so it was a little bit tricky with the sewing machine. I have it in a bit of a difficult position too. It's a bit squishy. It's not very spacious because I don't use it very often. I only use it occasionally. And so I don't want it to take up too much of my real estate. But the downside of that is when I do need to use it, I feel like I'm a little cramped in and I don't really have room to move. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this onto here and make a closure. So let's get out my eyelets, and I'm going to punch a couple of holes in this ice block stick. Now, where I saw this was from Liz at Buttons for Brains on YouTube, and she's got a fabulous channel that I've been watching for quite a few years now. She makes these lollipop sticks closures, and she makes all different sorts. I just thought to myself, I'd like to give that a try. So here we are. I've done a bit of a pared back version. She does lovely ones with silk in it and all different stuff. I'm just going to use elastic and have it so that it removes. So you can see that I'm just putting some eyelets into it after I've stamped on it. Now you could put a little bit of colour on this, but I think I've got enough colour. I have stamped with All in Create, the Create stamp, and it's called Splat Create, and it's number 922. The little flowers that I did on this paddle pop stick, they're from Dandelion, number 562 by All and Create, and I used the same one to stamp the flowerets and the dandelion information. And then the favours I just spelt out individually with my alpha stamps that I got from Amazon. So I'm going to put this on here, and I just have a little bit of cheesecloth that I'm going to put on it first, just to add a little bit of texture, and then glue the Create onto the ice block stick. Now when I stamped this, I stamped it and then I heat embossed it with copper embossing powder. Happy with that. We'll just tidy some of that off. And I have some elastic to go through it. This is 2.5 millimeters and it's got 15 meters on the roll, so it's slightly thicker hat elastic. And I got it on clearance at Spotlight here in Australia, as you can see. Yes, so head over to Liz and have a look at her channel. She's got some great things happening over there. She does some lovely mixed media. And I'm just going to tie this off. And I've left myself a lot of slack. Yes, that will work. Okay, let's tighten that off. Okay, there we go. There's my band to close my journal. And it is down low, but it doesn't matter. It will hold it closed once I put some pages in there. So now I'm going to put my flower in position and we'll call it a day. So there we go. As promised, I have done a wallpaper journal cover. I have used the wallpaper that I made a few months ago and covered a postage pack, paper postage pack, and turned it into a journal. I've made a little closure here that is on an ice block stick, and I've put on one of my packaging flowers, and it has some pockets. So the wallpaper creates the pockets, and I've got some fabric on the inside, and I've put some extra support into the spine. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So next week I will actually do 2 signatures into this, and I'll put in the signatures with you, and I'll also put in some of our favourites from last year, and I'd like to make a few special pages to go into it. So there we go. I hope you really like that, and it's inspired you to make some wallpaper and also to make some journals. So as I mentioned, I'll have those videos below. I'll have the wallpaper one and the flower one down below. And I'll also have a link to Liz at Buttons for Brains for you to go and have a look at her ice block closures. So I think she calls them lolly closures because they're called different things in the UK, but they're called ice block sticks here, or paddle pop sticks. All right, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. And if this is your first time watching the channel, welcome. I really appreciate you tuning in. Think about subscribing, that would be lovely. And leave a comment saying that you're new. I've got a few more videos coming up for the Junk Journal January. And I've also got a few other projects on the go, but so like I said, next week we will do the signatures for this journal. I hope you're having a great week and getting some time to make something fun and new. And I will see you very soon with another project. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Bye for now.